Good morning, boys and girls. I am so happy to be with you today. We're going to begin reading a new chapter. You guys have all been involved in read-alouds before, so you know how it works. The teacher's reading aloud and you're following along and looking at the pictures. We're going to start a brand new story, and then we'll read one chapter of this story every day for several weeks. And the name of the book is The Wind in the Willows. Some of you may have heard of this before, and some not. Wind, I know what wind is, but what are willows? Do you know what a willow is? Willows are types of trees. They're weeping willows is what I think of, and weeping willow trees often live near the water. If you look at this countryside map, which we'll try to look at every day because you will learn more and more about it as the story goes along. You'll see that there's a river in here and a canal, lots of things that you will get to know. This story is fiction. Fiction is a story that's created out of the author's imagination, which means it's not a true story. It is high quality children's literature. It's considered a classic, one of the very best stories that has ever been written for children. You think of Charlotte's Web, The Chronicles of Narnia, Where the Wild Things Are, A Wrinkle in Time. All of those books are classics. They're well written. They are worth reading. The stories are imaginative, and they stand the test of time. The Wind in the Willows was written by Kenneth Grahame. When he was born in Scotland, but when he was a little boy, he moved to England. And so this story is set in the English countryside next to the River Thames. You will hear some British English in this story that might be a little bit unfamiliar. Here in America, we speak American English, but in Britain, they spoke British and still do speak British England. For instance, you're going to hear one of the characters today saying that he's messing around in a boat. Well, messing about is not the kind of phrase that we would necessarily use, but we might say, oh, I'm messing around. If somebody says, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just messing around. And that just means that we're not doing anything with particular purpose. We're just there. The setting for this story is on the map. If you will look at this story right now, you're seeing, or the map right now on the picture, you're seeing the setting. The setting is where and when a story takes place. The main characters in our story will be a mole, a water rat, a badger, and a toad. Now, when animals or things in a story behave or is described like a person, it's called personification. Can you say that word with me? Personification. What word do you hear in there? Personification. You hear the word person. So personification is when an animal or a thing is given the characteristics of a person, such as talking, wearing clothes, living in a house, driving in a car. All of those things, all of that type of personification you will see and hear in this story. There's a lot of personification in here. Anytime that there is personification happening and you have animals talking and acting like people, then you know that that is a fantasy story. Not only is it fiction, but it's a certain type of fiction we call fantasy. It could never happen in real life. We're also going to talk about plot. The plot in a story, that's a story element, and it really is just the events of the story in which the characters evolve. What happens in the story? Those events are called the plot. Remember, the setting is the place, when and where a story takes place. Setting is when and where a story takes place. And you'll also find a lot of dialogue in this. Characters are having conversations. All right, I am ready for the story. Are you ready for the story? Let's begin. I'm going to move our picture up to the very beginning. and we will get started. Chapter 1 of The Wind in the Willows. The mole had been working very hard all the morning, spring cleaning his little house. First with brooms, then with dusters, then on ladders and steps and chairs with a brush and a pail of whitewash. There's one of those British English words. Whitewash is a special solution made of limestone and water used to paint, to whiten walls or other things. So it's like paint. He's painting for spring cleaning. He did this until he had dust in his throat and eyes and splashes of whitewash all over his black fur. Spring was moving in the air above and the earth below, and around him and his dark and little lowly house. Any wonder he suddenly flung down his brush on the floor and said, "Bother," and "Oh, blow," and also "Hang spring cleaning," and bolted out of the house without even waiting to put on his coat. Bother, oh, blow, and hang, those are examples of British sayings. Remember we talk about that British language? That shows someone doesn't like something. Similarly to how Americans would say, "Oh, snap," or "forget about it." Mole immediately made for the steep little tunnel, and without a moment's hesitation, he began scraping, scratching, and scrabbling. He worked busily with his little paws and muttered to himself, up we go, till at last, pop, his snout came out into the sunlight, and he found himself rolling in the warm grass of a great meadow. "This is fine," he said to himself. "This is better than whitewashing," he added as he jumped with delight at the joy of spring. In this state of happiness, he made his way across the meadow till he reached a hedge on the farther side. It all seemed too good to be true. As moving hither and thither, he observed everywhere birds building and leaves and flowers bursting forth. He thought his happiness was complete when, as he meandered aimlessly along, he came to the edge of a full-fledged river. There he stood quite mesmerized. As never before had he seen a river. He watched in awe as it shimmered and shined, gurgled and burgled, swirled and curled its way seaward. So bewitched and fascinated was he that he trotted for a while by the side of it, and eventually, exhausted with his tremendous effort, he sat down onto the bank to rest. As he sat on the grass and gazed across the river, a dark hole in the opposite bank, just above the water's edge, caught his eye. Mole quietly contemplated what a nice snug dwelling place it would make. As he gazed, something bright and small seemed to twinkle like a tiny star down into the heart of it. But it could hardly be a star, and it was too glittering and small for a glowworm. And then as he looked, it winked at him, and so revealed itself to be an eye, and a small face began gradually to grow up round it, like a frame round a picture. A brown little face with whiskers, a grave round face, with the same twinkle in its eye, small neat ears, and thick silky hair. It was the water rat. The two animals stood and regarded each other cautiously. "Hello, Mole," said the water rat. "Hello, Rat," said the Mole. "Would you like to come over?" inquired the rat. "Oh, it's all very well to ask," said the Mole rather grumpily, he being new to the river and riverside life and its ways. I think he's afraid he can't get across. The rat said nothing, but stooped and unfastened a rope, and hauling on it, then lightly stepped into a little boat, which the Mole had not observed. It was painted blue outside and white within, and was just the size for two animals, and the Mole loved it immediately. The rat sculled across, and then he held up his forepaw as the Mole stepped gingerly down. "Lean on that," he said. "Now step lively." And the Mole, to his great delight, found himself actually seated in the stern of a real boat. This has been a wonderful day, he said, as the rat shoved off and took to the sculls again. Do you know, I've never been in a boat before in all my life? What? Cried the rat, open-mouthed. Never been in a... what have you been doing then? Is it so nice as all that? Asked the mole shyly, though he was quite prepared to believe as he leaned back in his seat and surveyed the cushions, the oars, and all the fascinating fittings. Nice? It's the only thing, said the water rat solemnly as he leant forward for his stroke. Believe me, my young friend, there is nothing, absolutely nothing, half so worth doing as simply messing about in boats. Simply messing, he went on dreamily, messing about in boats, messing. Look ahead, Rat, cried the mole suddenly. It was too late. The boat struck the bank full tilt. The oarman lay on his back at the bottom of the boat with his heels in the air. About boats or with boats, said Rat went cheerily, picking himself up with a pleasant laugh. In or out of 'em, it doesn't matter. Look here, if you're really nothing else to do, what do you say we spend time on the river together? The mole wagged his toes from sheer happiness, spread his chest with a sigh of contentment, and leaned back blissfully into the soft cushions. What a day I'm having, he said. Let us start at once. Hold on a minute then, said the rat, as he tied fast the boat and climbed up into his hole above. Moments later, he reappeared, staggering under a fat wicker luncheon basket. Shove that under your feet, he said to the mole as he passed it down into the boat. Then he untied the boat and took the sculls again. What's inside it? Asked the mole eagerly. There's cold chicken inside it, replied the rat. Cold tongue, cold ham, cold beef, pickled herrings, salad, French rolls, crescent sandwiches, potted meat, ginger beer, lemonade, soda water. Oh, stop, cried the mole. It is too much. Do you really think so? Inquired the rat seriously. It's only what I always take on these little excursions. The other animals complain that I hardly have enough. The mole did not hear a word he said. He was already absorbed in the new life he was entering upon. He trailed a paw in the water and dreamed long waking dreams. The water rat, like a good little fellow he was, sculled steadily on and did not disturb him. I like your clothes, old chap, the rat remarked after some half an hour or so had passed. I'm going to get a velvet jacket myself some day. I beg your pardon, said the mole, pulling himself together with an effort. You must think me very rude, but all this is so new to me, This is a river. The river, corrected the rat. And you really live by the river? What a jolly life. By it, and with it, and on it, and in it, said the rat. It's brother and sister to me, and aunts, and company, and food and drink, and, naturally, washing. It's my world, and I don't want any other. But isn't it a bit dull at times, the mole asked, just you and the river, and no one else to pass a word with it? No one else to, well, I mustn't be hard on you, said the rat. You're new to it. The bank is so crowded nowadays that many people are moving away altogether. Oh, no, it isn't what it used to be at all. Otters, kingfishers, dab chicks, moorhens, all of them about all day long and always wanting you to do something, as if a fellow had no business of his own to attend to. What lies over there? Asked the mole, waving a paw toward a background of woodland that darkly framed the water meadows on one side of the river. Well, replied the rat hesitantly, that's the wild wood. We don't go there often. Are there scary creatures there? Mole asked, trying not to tremble. The squirrels are all right, Rat replied, and the rabbits, some of them, but rabbits are a mixed lot. And then there's Badger, of course. He lives right in the heart of it. Wouldn't live anywhere else either. Dear old Badger. Nobody interferes with him. Why? Who should interfere with him? Asked the Mole. Well, of course there are others, explained the Rat in a hesitating sort of way. Weasels, stoats, foxes, and so on. They're all right in a way. I'm very good friends with them past the time of day when we meet. But you can't trust them, and that's a fact. And beyond the wild wood? Mole asked. Beyond the wild wood is the wide world, said the Rat. And that's something that doesn't matter, either to you or me. I've never been there, and I'm never going, nor you either, if you've got any sense. Don't ever refer to it again, please. Now then, here's our backwater. At last, where we're going to lunch. And that's the end of our story for today. But there are some questions we should think about this story. So what kind of tale, what kind of fiction is The Wind in the Willows? Remember we said it is a classic tale, and it's also fantasy. Remember, fantasy has personification of animals or objects, might have magical events or things that really could never happen in real life. And what British English words or phrases did you hear in today's read aloud? I heard old chap, messing about, bother, and there were others. Why is there British English in this story? Well, it's because it's written by Kenneth Grahame, who grew up in England. Who are the main characters in today's read aloud? Really, we have two main characters. First, we met Mole, and then we met Water Rat. What kind of setting? Remember the setting? Remember the setting. It's where and when a story takes place. So, what kind of setting does the story begin? Where did our story begin? Where were we? We were in Mole's house, underground, and Mole's spring cleaning. So we know where he was, in his house, and we know when it was. It was spring. Where and when is the setting of a story. Did he stay in his house? No. The setting often changes throughout a story. We have outside, by the river, in a boat, near the wild wood, in the brackish water, which is slow water. It doesn't move quickly. So our setting has changed a lot already. It's still springtime, though. So what do we call the parts of the story where characters speak to each other? That's called dialogue. And what types of things does Mole learn from his dialogue with Rat? For instance, when Rat tells Mole in a hesitating way about the wild wood, what does Mole learn? Mole learns that squirrels and rabbits live in the woods, and most of them are okay, although the rabbits are a mixed lot. But he also learned that there are scarier creatures in the wild wood. Weasels, stoats, foxes, and Badger lives in the wild wood, but no one interferes with him. That's the end of our story for today.